We're going to go ahead and start this debate. We're going to give 15 minutes to Stephen McCleskey, and then we'll move on.
Good evening. Without much drama added in, this is a very polarizing issue that we're dealing with tonight, the existence of God. A lot of people have said they believe in God and they stopped believing in God. A lot of people never believed in God and they started believing in God. And so the population is very much either or, with some in between. And so I want to emphasize what has already been said. This is a very sensitive topic, and we should treat it as such. Outbursts aren't in good taste for either side, really. And so I just want to make that clear that this is a very sensitive topic, and people are going to have extremely polarizing views. As a musician, I believe that certain things stand the test of time, and that the things that do not stand this test are discarded. Some music is remembered forever, and some is long forgotten with time. Some last and some don't. Some are universally true, the lyrics are universally true, and some are true for a particular culture or period of time. It is important to note this because philosophy works on the same principle as does science. If a theory doesn't work, theory will be replaced with a better theory that does work more comprehensively. For a long time, it has been said that science is all there is. It is omnipotent, and religious belief is outdated and stale. In fact, opponents of religion state that we can explain things like the sun's rising, the seasons, and pregnancy scientifically, and so religion is obsolete nowadays. Now we can explain these in scientific terms, and I'm not saying all atheists believe this, in fact. And I do say that those are scientifically proven facts. That we know when a sperm and an egg come together, a child comes, and that a would-be mother is looking for the ovulation process. That the sun rises at a certain time, sets at a certain time because of the Earth's rotation and its orbit. So don't get me confused with maybe a medieval theologian or something like that. But I think that's oversimplifying religion in a lot of different ways. This topic, does God exist, is a very philosophical topic. Being as such, I really don't believe that the empirical philosophy of science has a whole lot to say on the subject. It can explain things, it can tell us how things work. But at the root level, the existence of God is rooted in intuition. It's rooted in objective human feeling. We have a feeling of something greater than ourselves. And so that's why I believe that science doesn't fit the mold for this sort of debate. It's welcome, certainly. But I don't believe that it can give us the answers that we're looking for. I believe that it may even justify an already pre-existing presupposition for that fact. But let's give a proper definition of science. Science is a method utilized in organized efforts to formulate explanation of nature, always subject to modifications and corrections through systematic observation. That's from Rodney Starks, For the Glory of God, from the Princeton University Press. There are many questions that science can't answer again. And most assuredly, there are questions that science can't answer. But what are some of these questions that science cannot answer? Is the question. I actually brought 5 instances, sorry for the splash, that science can't answer. The first thing being logical and mathematical truths cannot be accounted for by science. Science presupposes math and logic, and so to try to prove them with science is arguing in a circle. I can say there is water in this bottle. Why? Because there's water in the bottle. I'm using observation to prove observation. Metaphysical truths, number 2. Like other minds exist in my own. That the external world is real, or that the past was not created 5 minutes ago with the appearance of age, are all rational to accept, but they are not accessible by the scientific method. Again, science presupposes those sorts of things. Number 3, ethical beliefs cannot be proven by science. We cannot scientifically prove that the ethics of Nazi Germany are any better or any worse than the ethics of Western doctors at the same time. working on the Manhattan Project or anything like that. Number 4, aesthetic judgments cannot be scientifically proven, like beautiful likelihoods. I like this sort of music and I don't like this sort of music. I like this art and not this art. The subjective nature of art, music, and literature cannot be scientifically measured, nor can the sense of awe looking down a crevice, looking at the Grand Canyon or the ocean, cannot be accessed by the scientific method or science itself. And number 5, science cannot be justified by the scientific method. Science is full of unprovable assumptions. For instance, in the special case of the theory of relativity, light is assumed to move at a constant pace between points A and B. But we cannot know that for sure because it's really hard to measure the speed of light. We have to assume that theory for all the other theories surrounding it to uphold itself. In my estimation, science and philosophy hold a common relationship, actually with the Navy and the Marines, our 2 branches of military. Although they are 2 different branches of service, the Marines often work closely with the U.S. Naval Forces for training, transportation, and logistic purposes. In the same way, science borrows assets from philosophy. The philosophy of religion professor at Biola University, J.P. Moreland, says that science does the experiments, but philosophy keeps the books. What he means by that is that science will make observation and claims and do the experiments and show us things that are working, things that aren't working. And then philosophers will debate those subjects later and see if they are still working, and see if they're still upholding, and see if we even need them anymore in that case. So to say that philosophy is important is a huge understatement. We're still debating topics that were discussed in the 1500s in philosophy, and even before that also. Both entities, though, have an intersecting goal. Philosophy seeks truth and science pursues evidence. But do these assets combined produce a necessarily godless universe? Or does the universe necessarily need a God at its helm? In my view, not only is there a God, but there is a God that is necessary if we are to make any sense of what we see. What I'll now do is present what is known as the Kalam cosmological argument. It's an argument rooted in Muslim theology from the Kalam school of thought on the existence of gods from first cause. The Kalam is an argument for the existence of God, which claims that all things in nature depend on something else for their existence, or are contingent on that God, and that the whole cosmos must therefore itself depend on a being which exists independently or necessarily, a being that is without beginning but creates beginnings. Most recently, Dr. William Lane Craig has used it for his doctoral dissertation in 1979 and used it for his book entitled The Kalam Cosmological Argument. In this work, Craig lays out a simple deductive syllogism or argument. Everything that begins to exist has a cause, premise A. Premise B, the universe began to exist, and so premise C, therefore the universe has a cause. In premise A, we see that it cannot be rationally argued that something came from nothing. If this was how the universe happened, why would it simply stop there? Why wouldn't we not get randomly appearing cats or cars? This rationale is continually confirmed in our empirical experience, as well as our intuition. In premise B, we have the chance of an endless regression, an infinite, that the universe is simply an infinite entity. However, this is not a strong position to take either, as we see that in this temporal universe we live in, an actual infinite cannot exist. At what point would 1 plus 1 plus 1 eventually reach the level of infinity? A beginningless series of events in time entails an actually infinite number of things. Therefore, a beginningless series of events cannot exist. Nothing could produce something. Either the present moment was preceded by a beginningless series of prior events, or there was a first event. From what we've established before, there had to have been a first event. To put it another way, the series of events in time is a collection formed by adding one member after another. A collection formed by adding one member after another cannot be actually infinite. Again, going back to the 1 plus 1 plus 1 equation. Therefore, the series of events in time cannot be actually infinite. If the temporal series of past events is finite, there had to have been a first event. The conclusion that we can draw from this is that the universe must have either 1, began to exist out of nothing, 2, been created by something, 3, created itself, or 4, be uncaused or eternal. Conclusion 1 is metaphysically impossible. Something cannot come from nothing. Premise 2 would not be talking about the first thing, but an effect of the first thing. Premise 3 requires its own existence prior to creating itself, and thus, we are left with premise 4, the only possible conclusion logically. The beginning was something uncaused, eternal. The attributes of this beginning can be seen as such. The cause could be timeless, because actual infinites are impossible. Changeless, without the universe, as to change is to be in time. Changelessness requires immateriality, as matter is in constant change, at least on the subatomic level. Spaceless, as this is required by changelessness and immateriality. Extremely powerful in order to create all we are and see. Intelligent, as a timeless, uncaused cause must purposefully wake itself from an eternal/timeless slumber. And personal, since non-persons cannot have intelligence. This God must have at the very least a mind and will. If it is intelligent, then it has a mind. If it woke itself from this slumber, it willed itself. And it may even have a will for its creation. It could be creative, since it has created all we see and interact with. And the most beautiful thing of all, this idea of God is not mutually exclusive with science, as defined earlier. It created science. And so this, in a minimalistic sense, is what we mean when we say God. As you all very well know, there are a bunch of different religions that claim that they know God. Santos and I actually differ theologically and religion-wise. And I actually thought a better title for this would have been, Does a God exist? Than Does God exist? And so I just want to close by saying, tonight, I've talked about a very minimalistic God. I haven't spoken about the Christian God at all. I've just talked about the concept of a God, a creator. And so I guess I'll leave it at that.